I'm Romy, and
Hi.
I'm a first-year law student. I'm here interviewing Raina Penchansky, the co-founder and CEO of Digital Brand Architects, which is the industry leader in marketing landscape and management. Raina, it's so nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.
Wanted to start off by asking you, after starting in traditional public relations with brands like Coach, what ultimately made you make the jump from corporate public relations to founding DBA?
I was seeing the market shift, like where the
Hmm.
consumer was going and where they were inspired. It had always sort of been in at least in fashion, in the more traditional fashion magazines, the Vogues, the W's. And there was a real shift taking place in terms of the consumer looking to a new sort of generation of what we now call creator. At the time, it was YouTubers or bloggers, and fashion was sort of happening in a different way. And I was super inspired by this idea that there was this next generation of women who were sort of their own magazines.
And was there one defining moment that really opened your eyes to knowing that the creator space and the influencer space was going to be the next big industry?
I don't know if there was one defining moment because this was 15 years ago when nothing was the way it is today. And now it's massive now. And
Uh-huh.
creators are sort of the voices of everything. But it was more of a sort of innate, sort of like a gut feeling and being really inspired myself and being someone who's obsessed with sort of culture and transitions in culture and zeitgeist. And so I just sort of sensed it. And I don't know that I ever felt it wasn't just me in the beginning. There were two other co-founders, but for me at least, I don't know that I ever felt like, oh my God, this is a massive business. I just liked the idea of helping these women sort of building. Like this person was going to be the next Ina, or this person was going to be, the next whomever, Martha. And that was for me just like what I saw. I saw this sort of idea that these people were brands and they just didn't know it yet.
And it's also, I think, the personability and personality that comes with these influencers that like really just makes, in my eyes, as someone that follows so many influencers, makes their marketing just so much more effective.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you fall in love with the person, and everyone obviously like not, you can't be 100% of yourself the entire time because you have
Yeah.
things that you keep to yourself. But generally speaking, what you're falling in love with these people is their relatability, and
Hmm.
and what that means to you, and sort of how you interact with them. And these people are building these massive communities based solely on that sort of direct to their audience relationship, and it's incredible.
When you found Digital Brands Architects, as you mentioned, it wasn't anywhere close to the huge influencer space that it is today, which I'm
No.
sure also came with challenges of convincing different companies and agencies that digital talent was something to take seriously.
Yeah.
Were there any early challenges that you remember in convincing brands and other industry professionals of the value that came with these influencers?
I used to actually go to trade shows. There was one,
Hmm.
it was like a food specific trade show. And we would go from booth to booth to try to convince these brands that they should be working with creators, again, influencers at the time. And someone said to me, it sounds like you herd cats for a living. I mean, I had every cliche thing that every entrepreneur goes through, where someone's like, this is ridiculous. No one cares. Why would people pay these people? What are you talking about? Like all those sort of things. Anything that's disruptive to the status quo, there's always going to be pushback against it. And, we had a ton of it in the early days. It only sort of made it more fun in a weird way. It was like we saw something that no one else saw, and we were so
Hmm.
excited by that. I think as entre, for me at least, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I love the idea of building and growing and scaling and like breaking down barriers and figuring stuff out. And so that's exciting. The idea that like, okay, you don't see it yet, but like just wait. And then cut to now 15 years later, and you can't do anything without involving a creator.
As you mentioned earlier, when you first founded DBA, what inspired you was these influencers that you saw that had the potential to become their own brands, even if they didn't know it yet. What were some of these skills that you think that you saw in them, and some skills that you think that today's aspiring creators really need in order to thrive beyond their initial content potential?
It is a hard job to be a creator. It's a
Yeah.
hard job. It looks sexy, it looks, easy. It's very difficult. Your work ethic has to be outstanding. You got to
Hmm.
really, really work hard to create good content, to have a meaningful relationship with the community, to understand your community, to build your brand. Like you have to come to the table wanting this. That's one thing. There's a little bit of sort of magic and logic. It's like there is the business of it, which is I understand what my community wants. I understand what my content strategy is. I understand where I want to go and sort of what I want to
Hmm.
do and the kind of brand I want to build. And then there's just the intangible of it, which there are just certain people who are meant for this space. In the same way that there are certain people who are movie stars, or there are certain people who are TV personalities, and there is a level of an X factor there. But generally speaking, table stakes of it is you have to really come correct and work really hard and care a lot about what you're doing in the community you're building.
How do you think that the rise of artificial intelligence that's like changing the algorithms on platforms like TikTok and Instagram is affecting creators?
I can't really say for sure how it's affecting the algorithms because the
Yeah,
algorithms are such an enigma to us. But I think that creators who are using AI to make their lives easier, to make their content better, are putting themselves in a good place. Leslie Silverman, is head of innovations over at UTA, which is DBA's parent company, was saying the other day that it's like the ocean. It's going to come. The waves are going to come whether you like it or not. And that's what AI is, candidly. And you have
yeah.
to sort of embrace it because it's going to happen. And so the idea is, how do you embrace it in a meaningful way that helps and grow your business? It's not to say that I think we're going to have this whole generation of AI creators and those are going to be the next creators. I just don't think that's the case, candidly. There'll be some of that, but people do want that level of connectivity and authenticity. And you like people who are flawed and real and you want their narratives. But I think if you're a creator in the space, you have to figure out how is AI helping me? Whether that's captions, whether that's like content ideas, whatever that is, it can't be a cut and paste, but you've got to figure out how you're using it to your advantage.
I agree. What I love at like its core of like creators and the whole social media platforms is the relatability that I see and the influencers and the creators that I'm always consistently seeing on my explore pages. But even now, I'm still starting to see things that you don't catch at first, but content that looks so realistic that's like 100% AI generated and AI
Yeah, yeah,
created,
yeah.
which sometimes catches me by surprise because I like what I love about the influencers that I follow is their relatability. And I still catch myself watching these videos that's like 100% AI created.
Yeah. And listen, we're gonna have both, but like everything,
Yeah.
the pendulum is always swinging. And so it's never gonna be just one of one thing.
Are there any new trends in the influencer creator space that you see really taking off outside of the whole AI usage?
I think it's a little bit of like what's old is new again. YouTube, I think YouTube is having a real resurgence and sort of the
Yeah,
importance.
with YouTube Shorts especially.
Yeah, and also long form content on YouTube, sort of
Yeah.
going back to the OG days of this space where, it was very much about long form content on YouTube. Doesn't mean that, TikTok isn't wonderful and Instagram, those are sort of Instagram is very much the backbone of the entire sort of creator industry. But I think that the idea of these short form creators translating into long form is really important. I think streaming, we're seeing it already in terms of like the significance of some of the people who are streaming, and that's only going to grow. Also, these more sort of niche communities that aren't even that niche. You saw what sort of book talk has done for books, especially among women, romance specifically. I love watching these sort of more niche things, become mainstream.
100%. And with the way that the algorithms work, it's crazy. Like I would think that something's like so niche and so specific to me. And I text about it one time, it's on my phone.
Yeah.
And after that, my entire explore pages are all like I feel like I'm inside of a community with all these people that have the exact same interests as me. So just out of curiosity, what has been your biggest influencer partnership or activation to date?
I mean, I think it's less about sort of the individual activation and about more sort of large scale things that we've helped build. Like a great example is Patrick Starr's beauty brand One Size,
Hmm.
which is, this formidable beauty brand. All doors to
Yeah,
just expanded internationally, literally a few days ago. Things like that, where we're really involved from the ground up on sort of taking someone's dream and bringing it to life. There's been a ton of sort of one-off incredible. We have clients who have, New York Times bestseller books. We have people on television shows. We have people on billboards. But it's the idea of like taking something and building it from scratch. I think those things are really incredible.
I mean, I personally use One Size. I think every single person I know
You use a
uses,
setting spray?
yeah, my favorite. And I'm sure
Yeah.
every single person I know uses at least one thing from One Size. Was
Yes.
there something about that campaign and that activation specifically that you think made it such a success?
I mean, Patrick, candidly, he's
Yeah,
an absolute unicorn in the sense of like his understanding of the beauty space, his understanding not only of the physicality of the product, but also like how to really tap into the emotion of beauty And I think just the idea that like one, beauty is a one size fits all, like that in and of itself is just, who doesn't want to participate in that type of a brand and that level of sort of inclusivity. And the content is always so fun and, and it's, his and his team. He's got an incredible partner and Juliet, who is the CEO of the company. And it's just, it's an incredible, incredible team. And he's at the forefront, really pushing it.
Yeah, I know personally, before I even got into using makeup and like being a fan of One Size as a brand, for me, I loved him. I loved his content. Even if I wasn't interested in makeup specifically, the content that he's always been putting out has just been so fun and engaging and like feel like you know him as a person
Yes.
outside of like using his products. And then
Yeah.
once I started to get into makeup, I was like, I have to,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. And he's exactly that person. He's as wonderful in real life as he is in terms of his content.
Is there any vision you have for what you think the next generation of creators is going to look like?
They're getting younger and younger. I think it will just continue to evolve. I think really what it will be is, there's different kinds of content works in different eras. In certain
Yeah.
times you want inspirational, more, at value additive to your life in terms of tips or things like that. And then other times you're just looking for total aspirational. I just want to follow someone who's on vacation all the time and I just want to look at. So it's like, it's really more about like culture and where culture sits and how creators adapt to what culture, because culture is moving really fast. There's so much going on in our world. The world is also becoming a much smaller place. So I think it's less about the creator themselves. Obviously, you're going to have creators who have their own individual style, their own
Yeah.
individual, I mean, Get Ready's with Me weren't there, however many years ago. So like those kinds of trends will always happen, but I think it's about creators really sort of seizing and understanding what's happening in the world and like how their content fits into that.
We talked about this a little bit earlier of what skills you thought you saw in influencers that you thought like they had the potential to create their own brands. What's one piece of advice that you would give to people looking to succeed in a space that feels so attainable but is so hard to really succeed and grow in?
Don't try and be somebody else. Be who you are and figure out what your point of view is. But to be a version of what someone else is doing, well, it doesn't really work. You won't find sort of enjoyment in that. And it won't be authentic to you, and it'll be really hard to maintain and to scale. So I think you've got to really figure out what it is. What are you bringing to the equation? Like, what's your point of differentiation? What's your point of view? And that's what you've got to lean into.
Yeah, I think that every single influencer really that I see that's like consistently growing really started off with something that was just like so niche and got them that one viral video that
Yeah.
they were able to attain their initial following base from. And then from then,
And it can be
they've
something
grown.
that's just about your personality. It can just be a way
Yeah.
you speak or that you do something. And, it doesn't have to be necessarily like a thing you've done or a piece of content. It can just
Yeah.
be something about you personally, but you have to always lean into what it is that is authentic to you. You just can't, being another version of someone else doesn't work.
Just one last question. Is there anything that you can provide some insight on some of maybe like the little known logistics that happen behind the scenes that followers might not know about?
I mean, there's so many logistics behind. When you're working in this space, a ton of it is about the details. Like a brand is saying, "Oh, I want you to say X, Y, and Z," or "This is how we want it positioned," and you know your audience better, and you've got to say, "No, this is how I want it positioned, and this is how I want this to happen, and this is how I feel strongly about this." Or there's a lot. There is a ton of back and forth, and there's a ton of, you're constantly thinking about what the right content and how do you want to, what do you want to do next and what does that look like and all of the nuance that would go into any sort of imagine you're a magazine or you're a news outlet and like
Mm,
the amount of editors and writers and coordinators and behind the scenes people that it takes to produce something, and yet you're one creator doing it all on your own. So there's so much that goes on behind the scenes.
yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so
sort of
much. It was great speaking with you.
meeting you. Take care.